Hello, this is Katie Cardovan, and I'm back with a new episode of my season 2 of the Unlearning live stream. And the focus this season is about unlearning bad workshop tactics. And the topic for today is about unlearning bad workshop agendas. You might wonder, how can she talk in 15 minutes about agendas only? Well, I can tell you, I have a lot more than 15 minutes available. But what I've done is I've collected some of my most recent experiences, and I wanted to compile some of these key questions that you should consider upon your next workshop, either as a facilitator or as a participant. So let's get to it. And I'll share my short presentation with you as usual. And feel free, if you are joining this live, you can add a comment and I will pick it up as we go along. If you're watching a replay via LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you're welcome to add a comment and I'll get back to you afterwards. So let's get to it then. And I just want to remind you, if you haven't tapped into this series before, that it's important now to focus on learning. And the reason is that we need to adapt, we need to be agile, we need to learn new things. And also we need to stop doing a number of things and unlearning some of the things that are not serving us anymore. And typically, from a behavioral scientist perspective, it's really difficult to change behaviors. It takes time, practice, and determination to be successful, which is why I'm focusing on the unlearning perspective when I share some of my content pieces with a broader audience. When we're talking about workshop truths and how we can unlearn them, of course, there will be things that are more applicable either for preparations or the execution itself throughout the workshop, but also regarding the follow-up after a workshop. And the agenda will mainly then be today addressed from the preparations perspective, but also I'll mention a few things during execution. And I hope you can pick up some things that could be useful to you moving forward. When we talk about the phenomenon of unlearning, we need to crack the code. And a very simplistic way of doing that is what I call my 3-step cracking the code sequence. And of course, it's a lot more advanced in practicality, but this really works as well. So if you need a shortcut, you can always rely on these 3 steps. So first of all, you need to address the topic about and understand the facts. So typically, how did the recent workshop agendas work out for you? Did you manage to stick to it? Did you have the opportunity to be flexible about it? Did it cause any stress or did it not? What was good about it? What was not good about it? And what do you want to do differently? Which is leading us on to the second part here. It's about also changing the perspective. If it didn't work out too well, what could be done differently? How can you address that so you don't repeat something that didn't work out well for you? And then the fun step in order to be successful at unlearning any bad workshop habit or any bad workshop topic in general is, of course, to practice. So you need to practice the new strategies so you change the behavior over time and that you get new receipts that something new is working better for you. Having said that, let's look at some of the things you can address in order to discover whether it makes sense for you or not. And then I'll give some examples as well from my recent history about running workshops and also from participating in numerous workshops throughout the years. First of all, what is an impressive agenda? Think about it. As a participant, you are watching the agenda and you get immediately expectations for the day, right? So either you get it beforehand or you get it in the morning. And if it is very detailed, it will give you one type of impression. And if it's less detailed, you will maybe be more curious. Maybe there will be something more to discover. And as a facilitator, it's important to think about how can you engage and intrigue the participants so they don't have too many associations beforehand. An impressive agenda might actually be no agenda at all. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there is less a need of a very detailed, specific agenda, but there's a need for being clear on the themes and also on the logistics of the workshop. So, for instance, if you have a very detailed agenda with lots of agenda points and times, then schedule for each agenda point, that could cause a lot of stress and inflexibility throughout the day. What you want to achieve is, of course, to have an agenda where have a lot of flexibility because you don't really know what will happen throughout the day. So you need the flexibility to be built into and allow for adjustments as you go along, keeping the outcome of the workshop in mind, of course, all the time. To be honest with you, maybe the most impressive agenda I've had as a participant in the past was that there was no agenda at all. And I was participating in a 3-day event, and we were asked about our expectations early on. And we put them onto the wall, like many people do it when they run workshops and similar events, collaboration initiatives. But we left them. And there was no agenda, but there was, of course, a structure to the meeting instead. But I didn't know exactly in a detailed format what to expect. And that was really intriguing because I was open, I was curious, and I was observing how the facilitators were dealing with that. Sometimes when something happened in the room, they sat down in front of us, two of them, and they discussed how to deal with maybe a different type of prioritization, what they should do before they did the next thing they had planned for us. And we could observe them and that their discussion about that. So we tapped into that from a meta perspective. And of course, that set in motion a number of thoughts and ideas. And we were intrigued, to be honest. So that could be a way of doing it. But of course, then as a facilitator, you need to be really skilled to do that. And a prerequisite would be that you are, of course, able to set expectations very early on and prepare the workshop and build trust. So when they show up, they are not surprised to seeing that the agenda is not as detailed as they might expect from previous events. And that leads us on to some of the rules that we need to establish, because it's really important to be clear about the logistics. When do you need people to be in the room? Not exactly what they're going to do in the room, but when are they going to be there? And when will they have some pauses, some breaks? When will they be able to do other things? That is important to people. And also, of course, if there are other parallel activities, like maybe there are some physical activities, maybe there are some excursions, maybe there are other things happening that will be adding some variation to the workshop content itself. Those things need to be clear and very clearly communicated in terms of timing. So basically, what you could focus on, which I find really helpful, is to skip the details of the agenda, but to make sure that people understand when they need to be in the room. And that the key thing is that they are going to do exercises. And based upon what's happening, those exercises will be adapted and customized so they will fit in order to move towards the expected outcome of the workshop. So which items then need to be specified? Of course, if you have external guests, if you have certain activities that require certain logistics. But beyond that, really not much need to be specified. So that leaves with a lot of freedom, but also it takes some skill to manage those expectations and keep the room safe, and also make sure that people are still intrigued and not diverting into or being distracted by other things. Are there any things that could be kept as a backup? Of course. So you don't really know what will happen during the workshop. Even if you know the participants in advance, even if you have prepared yourself well, that I shared in the last episode about how you can do that and set expectations and kind of interview all the key people in the workshop, you don't really know what will happen because there will be dynamics, there will be creativity, there will be other things outside of the workshop room affecting them. So you need to have a number of backup things at hand. And skilled facilitators will have a variety, a smorgasbord of different exercises and ways of dealing with that. So what you need to do is to actually prepare for not only plan B, but also maybe plan C, so you are well prepared and able to, on the spot, make some quick decisions on how to adjust the flow of the workshop, how to add or maybe emphasize certain activities, and how to eliminate certain things that may not be as important as they seem to be before you got started. That leads us on to the final point here on my list today. It's about variation and flexibility, because that is really the key thing to think about as a facilitator. Sometimes I've worked with people running workshops where they would like to have a very detailed schedule, down to the minute actually, on how much time should be spent on this and that. And I understand the necessity to keep an overall timeline, but when it gets too detailed, it kind of feels like a very strict exercise, and it will really add a lot of stress to not only the facilitators, but also that will be in a subtle way transmitted over to the participants. So my preference is to have more, I would say, overall timelines. So by this time, we should be able to conclude this type of exercise or this type of result. And by then, we need to make sure that we have come this long in that certain process or decision making or whatever we're doing at that moment. So overall timelines, I think, works really, really well. And especially if you're working with somebody else, you need to really fine tune that and get to know that person. So you are, I would say, in a good position to agree on that on the go. You need to make some very quick decisions in order to allow the participants to feel that you know what you're doing, that you are flexible, but that you're not diverting too much, because you, as a facilitator, will be in control of the whole flow. And the great workshops, the ones that are really successful, that's when the participants really trust you. You're taking them on some kind of a mystery trip. They know some things, they don't know all the details, but they feel safe, and you are guiding them. And ideally, they shouldn't really notice if you change things along the way, because you have prepared that. You are prepared with your plan B and C as well. So let me see here. I've got a question here, and I will show that, and let's address that right away. Magdalena here asks if I think that there are things that are absolutely need to be on the agenda for people to feel in control, apart from when they need to be in the room. Well, I would like to be a bit provocative on this, and I said, well, not so much. I think it's important for people to understand why they are in the room if they don't already know that. They need to be reminded about that. And then at the end, they need to understand also that we are moving towards the assumed outcomes and the results. So they feel that this is worthwhile investing in. But beyond that, they don't really need much details, but they need to feel that you know what you're doing. And probably the best workshops are the ones that allow them to be a bit, I would say, not in the dark, but feeling safe that they are on a trip and that they have a very skilled and smooth facilitation going on. Thank you for that question. And also another comment here from Magdalena. I totally agree with that one, of course. Practical things like meals, of course, and breaks and general coffee and stuff like that. But also, if you have put in time for going for a walk, maybe you have some exercises actually happening as you do physical activities. That's also important to make sure that people understand when that is, so they can make a decision if they want to spend that time on that, or maybe do some phone calls or whatever they need to do to stay focused for the time that they're supposed to be in the workshop room being focused on the workshop content and progress. Thank you for those, and I will then just leave it up to you to think about, what does this mean to me? Do I feel that I need to, or I'm expected to show off in my agenda to really specify a number of things so I can share what and make sure that people understand that this is what we actually invested in? Or can I do a lot of that work, the heavy load up front, and set expectation and build trust? So when people show up, they know what they need to know, but then they are trusting you to guide them through, as long as they see that the exercises that you are running, the way you are facilitating, those things are leading them towards the results that they are expecting. Okay. With that, time is running. I can see that. I really appreciate the comments. And I will close off by, of course, a new challenge that I do every time I have a new episode. And this week's challenge to you is the following. Which agenda items do you need to specify in your next workshop, if any? And which do you keep as backup items? How brave will you be in minimizing the details in your next workshop agenda? That is my challenge to you. So good luck with that one. And as always, I will disclose now the next topic for next week, which is unlearning bad workshop dynamics. A lot of things can happen throughout the workshop. A lot of things can go wrong, and you need to be prepared, both as a facilitator but also as a participant. So I hope that you will be back tapping into that as well. And as always, if you want to learn more about this, I have this online recording available for you if you want to crack the code further and get more of those detailed questions that will help you up on your next event. There's a 20-minute workshop insight session via bit.ly/workshop hacks, and you're welcome to join and participate in that. Until then, next time, Thursday, I will look forward to following up on any additional questions, and I hope to see you back soon. Take care. Good luck with your workshops. Bye.